SEC meetings in Destin, Florida over this week. I've actually never been to these. It's kind of funny. Some national media guys go there and, go on Paul Feinbaum and talk about the team. There's a couple, and it's fine. But mainly what you get out of it, you get these little tidbits of information from football, basketball, and every athletic director there. So going into the 2025 football season, we're just going to talk briefly about this. Mike Elko, he spoke today, and like every coach, I think Kirby Smart was the most electric, talking about the transfer portal and going the winter portals ruining college football, and he's always the most fiery, and mainly it's because he's won a lot and he's kind of the king of the castle right now. And then you got guys like Sarkisian, who's more laid back and really talking about like the playoff model. That's a big discussion right now. Automatic bids, what so have you. And, Mike Elko, the biggest off-season questions for him had to do with, how's this team going to rebound after a 1-4 finish? Because we talked about on the show last week at length, looking at the schedule, looking at, what they've done in the offseason, obviously the 14 transfer portal additions, but nothing comes close to the health of senior running back Le'Veon Moss. You and I had talked about this previously. And there's a sect of the fan base who's very skeptical of him being 100% healthy, no matter how many times the coaching staff and the man himself has said he's 100% healthy. They feel like, we've seen this movie before. These guys say they're healthy and they go into fall camp and they think they have a setback and then they're not playing the first 2 games and they just don't look the same. That's not the case. It goes back to Pro Football Focus put a tweet out there talking about Le'Veon Moss and being a 2026 NFL draft prospect, and they were talking about, if he's 100%, we're going to see, one of the best backs in the country. And then Le'Veon Moss, who's probably getting sick of people thinking he was injured still, went out there and said, look, I am 100%. And today, and in the Brazos Country, press conference, coaches night press conference, Mike Elko has now said twice, because he keeps being asked by this, and look, that's the media's job. He said today, Le'Veon Moss is 100%, and more importantly, he said he's looking really good out there. He's cutting. He's got his power back. He's got his burst back. We all know watching Moss last season that he was the cornerstone of that offense. How well he was doing is how well the offense is going to do. How well he was doing is how well Marcel Reed is going to do, because it's going to give him confidence. He's going to, the Arkansas game was a great example of that. And I'll let you speak here. But Marcel Reed had to make the passes at the end of that game. It was one of his worst games. Moss had this huge run at the end to really seal the deal. But when he did that, it helped Marcel Reed. It helped him get back into that mental zone of, okay, I got to make these. I got to hit my receivers now. I got to get into either field goal range or we got to get a touchdown. And it's that symbiotic relationship that's going to be extremely important. No matter how much Marcel Reed improves next season as a passer, he's going to need that running game to be as good or better next season.
Definitely going to need to be better. Especially after, and I know one of the other comments that I listened to intently after hearing about the SEC meetings was, well, how are you going to adjust after that 1-4 record in the last 5 games of the season last year? And he said, and Mike Elko was very straight up. He's like, hey, we had to adjust to some things we weren't ready on. Mm-hmm. That straight up. That's how we phrased it. We had a couple of back-to-back road games, just a whole lot of things that they weren't prepared on.
And I have the quote right here, actually. And then
go ahead.
Get your thoughts on it. So he was asked, basically and what I started with, just the collapse, just that this team lost their identity. They looked like the flip script in the worst ways after the South Carolina blowout, where actually they were tied, I think 20-all at one point, and then it just went to hell for them. And that was when Le'Veon Moss went down for the year. But he said, it was a lot of things. One, we were in a situation we haven't been in before. We played back-to-back night games on the road in the SEC as the team that was being hunted. I don't know that we handled that well. That's received a lot of criticism from some outside people of saying, well, you're the coach, you're supposed to know how to handle it. I'm going to give him some grace here. He had a new coaching staff. He had a team that that 7-1 start was a surprise. We have to remember that. You go back into LSU when LSU was up 17-3 or 17-7, completely physically outplaying A&M. Connor Wegman was struggling. He went in the second half, inserted Marcel Reed. The run game got going. They ended up blowing him out 38-23. And that was kind of okay, maybe A&M is for real type of game. But again, I'm not going to say it was a fluke, but it was just something that just kind of happened. He took a risk. It worked. Obviously, Colin Klein's play calling at that time worked. But this is the type of situation where you learn from your mistakes after year one. Every coach in the SEC has done it, including Steve Sarkisian. For Texas fans kind of living in a fantasy land that believes that those first 3 years weren't, didn't exist or something. He had to go through the ups and downs of Big 12 play. And yes, when he got in the SEC, he just had such a good veteran, talented team that they made the run. We don't know until we know.
Exactly.
So that's really what he meant, is that I'm going to learn from my mistakes this season.
Yeah, so for sure. I mean, when he said that they were being hunted, that is a valid point. I mean, at that point, they were 7-1 before the last 5 games of that year, and hunted in the terms of, hey, they are tied for the first position in the SEC right now. So there is a target on your back when you're doing that well. Every single team has had that happen to them when they're tied for first or first place solely. People are looking out for you. People are planning to attack you in a different way. So how are they going to adjust? We won't know until we know, like you said. So I'm really, really interested to see if these first 2 games before Notre Dame, what exactly did they do this offseason to adjust so that if they're ever in a situation like that, how prepared are they to, maybe you are down going into halftime, maybe you're down by 2 scores. How do you adjust so that you can get your team on the right headspace and on the same level together as a team so that you can overcome that and it ends up pulling out a win on that football field? Because last year it was not perfect at all. It was quite honestly tragic to see how the defense was the last, I'm not going to say 5 games, we'll say 4 games of that season, because Elko said it himself. It was awful to watch after that bowl game, and their changes needed to be made. He knew that going into this offseason. He has taken it by the reins. So I think that once we get out of these like summer OTAs, we'll call it, that colleges now can do, what is going to be the toughness, the grit, the mentality, the grind of this A&M team going into that first game?
Yeah, no, it's the mental aspect. It's very interesting to me because everybody's against A&M. I'm not just talking about Texas fans who live for, piling on and acting like, Arch Manning's going to win them a title just automatically without any work or something like that. But I'm talking about everybody else who has seen A&M become that 8 wins, 7 wins type of program. It's not, there's nobody in favor of A&M right now. Like, national media will give them their flowers, and there's a lot like ESPN and Fox and others who have said, you look at the roster, it's good enough to be a 9, maybe a 10-win team. We've had other analysts who've said, yeah, I mean, they're good enough. That's fine if you think you're good enough. But what are you going to do in the next couple of months to become that team that when you're down 20-14 with 5 minutes left and possession, what plays are you going to draw up? What are you going to focus on? What is your identity in the first 2 games? How are you going to face UTSA and Utah State? Are you going to just, try to be a balanced offense? Or are you going to rest on your laurels like you did most of the end of the season, thinking that maybe something will happen? Or are you going to change things when you have to? It's just, and one of the biggest things is, Marcel Reed's development as a passer is obviously the talking point that's going to head into fall. And I understand that, because if you don't have a guy who's excellent in the throw game, and I mean going to make those tough passes, when needed, your offense really is non-existent because you can run the ball as much as you want. And yes, some are going to have trouble against it. And that's why I can see them going into the season wanting to utilize their deep running back group and just run as much as possible and focus on that as a strength to get through those first 2 games and then mix it up against Notre Dame. I think that would be a mistake. I think you have to play the way you're going to play at Notre Dame against those first 2 teams. You have to get Marcel Reed confident and using those weapons he has in the passing game now. You have to figure out how we're going to utilize all that speed we have now, because we know that Casey Concepcion is going to be our number 1. We know that Terry Bussey's going to be healthy at the time. How do we really utilize him as a wide receiver full time now? And then we have all these other guys. We have Mari Nyblack at tight end. We have all these weapons, but how are we going to use them? How are we going to kind of hide them and then trick defense, trick secondaries? And, there's so much that they can do because they finally have the roster to mix things up. They don't have to go in to a season thinking, well, we have so many weaknesses in this area, so we have to kind of cover them up. That's not the case anymore. So I just really want to see, are you going to be like a Texas or an Alabama who is proud of the talent you have and knows how to use it? And are you going to be an actual threat and somebody that other teams fear? Because right now that's not the case. And until we start the season, until they play Notre Dame, I think that we talked about it last week. I think that they have to beat Notre Dame on the road to gain that national respect back and gain that respect from the SEC back that, okay, maybe this team is an actual contender.
Yeah, for sure. I think you said it perfectly that national respect isn't going to be there again to get rid of the narrative of, oh, they're going to go XYZ record every single season or worse. I mean, more power to A&M right now. You can go up all you want right now. It is solely up to you, though. You're not going to get gifted anything. You're not going to hand it anything on that football field whatsoever. I think that the offense with the running back room that it has is going to be the best we've probably seen it in recent years. The entire running back room there, I have such high expectations for that running back room, up to the point of I think they're probably A&M probably will have the chance to be the best ground game in the SEC this year. So when you get up to that Notre Dame game, you're going up against a first-year starter in CJ Carr, but that's not the only thing. Their defense, from what I've heard out of their spring camps, their defensive staff loves their defense even more than they just had this past year. And they just had multiple people go off to that NFL draft. But they think that their defense is one of the best, if not the best, in the entire country right now. So how are you going to be able to attack that as a team and not get discouraged when things don't go your way? Now, Elko has taught, hey, put your head down, work. But now if somebody like a Notre Dame comes in or you go to them where it messes with that work, can you lift your head up and pretty much smack them away?
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's kind of funny because you look at the schedule and we're pretty early, so we don't really know how good certain defenses are going to be. I know that a lot of staffs love their defense. I keep hearing how much Auburn thinks their defense is better than their offense, even though they have 2 of the best wide receivers. Granted, they have a quarterback who really hasn't lived up to his recruiting potential. And if that is the case, though, A&M is going to be playing some of the best defenses all season throughout the SEC. So that's what hinges on the offense. And this is a huge year for Colin Klein because there's no more bandage of, oh, well, it's just your first year. We've got next year for you to improve. No, it's do or die because we've already seen Elko make changes when things weren't going well. I mean, you look at the Lyle Hemphill addition. That was not, hey, Jay Bateman, you did a decent job, and we'll give you another chance. Like, don't worry. No, it was a demotion, and it was bringing in a young guy who at James Madison last year, I think he had a top 15 defense and one of the better secondaries. And he's one of those young up-and-coming coaches who knows that I'm going to come into your Texas A&M program and potentially be the problem solver for all the issues with blown coverages last season that killed him against, Auburn and Texas and USC and a couple other and South Carolina. And that's where I give Elko credit, because look, I know that there are some people who just want coaching staffs to fire everybody and start. That doesn't happen. That's never going to happen. And if it does happen, it's a very random occurrence. It doesn't happen all the time. But he did make the necessary changes because he knows, and he had talked about this during the Brazos Coaches Night, that he's very proud of his team, that they've all really stuck together. They barely lost anybody in the transfer portal. Basically, their entire defense, outside of obviously the 3 defensive linemen who went to the NFL draft, are coming back. They've got 14 additions, a ton of talent coming in at edge. They've got Tyler Onienum at defensive tackle, who I think is going to be a star next season. And they feel very confident in what they have. And I know that because of the way they finished, that bad taste is not going to come out of people's mouths anytime soon until they start winning games. But like, it's our job to obviously report it and tell you about it. But I think that Elko will see during the rest of the summer, and when he starts to continues to take podiums, this is a guy who knows how critical this season is, not just for his tenure, but it's for A&M's future, both recruiting, portal additions, general respect, all those things. Because again, they haven't made a college football playoff since its inception. They got close in 2020 with Jimbo Fisher, which obviously led to the disaster of extending him and stuff. So it's always a laughing stock with A&M right now. So it's his job to get them back to respect. Not just national respect is what it is, but respect from the SEC, respect from the fan base of thinking, because you do see that, it's another 7-5 season. I see it all the time. And I'm going, look, I get you're being negative, and it's just the way it is. But you got to play the games, you got to watch the games, and you got to see notable improvements. And that's the hope for next season.